Okay, so today we're diving into a case that I think a lot of people still remember vividly, even after all these years.
The Scott Peterson case.
Exactly, the Scott Peterson case.
And the sources you gave me, I mean, wow, it's really a story that goes way beyond just the crime itself, right? It makes you think about how we perceive people, like how we can be so wrong about someone.
Yeah, I mean, just on the surface, you had this young couple, Scott and Lacey, living what seemed like the perfect life in Modesto.
They really were the picture of, the American dream, weren't they? Expecting their first child, little Connor.
And that's what makes everything that unfolded so much more disturbing.
Right, you have this image of them being so happy, and then you dig deeper and you see there were cracks in that facade.
From what I read in these sources, it seems like there were financial problems they were dealing with and maybe some arguments of things they kept hidden from the outside world.
And that's what's so unsettling about this case, right? It forces you to wonder what goes on behind closed doors, what secrets people keep.
Absolutely, it makes you question everything. So, to set the scene, it's Christmas Eve 2002, and Lacey just disappears.
Vanishes without a trace.
And Scott, he reports her missing, tells the police he was out fishing in the San Francisco Bay that day.
And initially, there was this huge outpouring of support. The whole community rallies around Scott. Everyone's searching for Lacey.
Yeah, it was a massive search effort, and the media attention was just relentless.
I mean, it was everywhere. Every news channel, every newspaper, and I think that's where things started to shift.
Because people began noticing inconsistencies in Scott's story.
Yeah, his demeanor was, well, I guess you could say a little too calm for someone whose pregnant wife had just vanished.
And there were things that didn't quite add up in his alibi.
And then, boom, the news of the affair breaks.
With Amber Frey, and that changes everything.
Completely changes the public's perception of Scott. He goes from grieving husband to prime suspect almost overnight.
And looking back at the media coverage from that time, you can really see how that revelation just fueled the fire. Everyone was talking about it.
It made people question every single thing Scott had said, every move he made.
It's like all trust was just shattered.
Gone.
And tragically, months later, in April 2003, Lacey and Connor's remains are found.
And this is where it gets really chilling, the location.
Right by the bay where Scott had claimed to be fishing.
It was a devastating discovery, and it really casts a dark shadow over everything Scott had said.
And it raised so many questions about the investigation itself, like, had they overlooked crucial evidence early on because of the focus on Scott's affair?
There's a lot of debate about that. In these sources, some experts argue that the affair might have actually delayed investigators from pursuing other leads.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the case goes to trial, and I'm really curious about this because from what I've read, the evidence against Scott was largely circumstantial.
Right. There wasn't that one smoking gun.
So what was it that ultimately convinced the jury to convict him?
Well, the prosecution did a very good job of weaving together a narrative of guilt based on the evidence they had. His changing alibis, the affair, his behavior after Lacey's disappearance, things like dyeing his hair and having a large amount of cash on him.
Those were all red flags.
Exactly. And while the defense argued that the lack of direct forensic evidence should have created reasonable doubt,
The jury didn't buy it.
No, they didn't. And they found Scott guilty of first-degree murder for Lacey and second-degree murder for Connor.
And he was sentenced to death.
But then, of course, we have another twist in this saga. Fast forward to 2020, and Scott's death sentence is overturned.
Due to issues with jury selection during the original trial.
Right, some jurors had been improperly dismissed, and this sparked a whole new wave of controversy. You have legal experts arguing both sides of the issue.
Some saying it was the right decision legally.
While others felt it was a miscarriage of justice.
And this case just keeps generating discussion even now.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about it right now, and it really comes down to the fact that there are still unanswered questions, lingering doubts.
And I think that's what keeps people fascinated by the Scott Peterson case.
It's a puzzle, and maybe we'll never have all the pieces.
But the sources you shared really delve into the complexities of the case. I think they challenge us to think about what justice truly means in a situation like this, where there's no easy answer.
Yeah, is it about having definitive proof? Is it about punishment? Or is it something else entirely? And I think that's a question we all have to grapple with, not just in this case, but in any complex legal situation.
So after this deep dive into the Scott Peterson case, where do you think we go from here?
Well, I think we keep asking questions, we examine the evidence, we consider the different perspectives, and we engage in thoughtful discussion about the issues this case raises, because ultimately, that's how we learn and grow.
It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Exactly, and who knows, maybe someday we'll have more answers, but until then, we keep searching for the truth.